Hey folks, I'm Ryan, this is Roll for Initiative, and on this episode I'm going to talk to my friend Tucker about using bits to customize and enhance your wargaming experience. Alright, so Tucker, for folks like me, I'm still a month into playing Warhammer, why don't you let us know, what do we mean when you hear people start talking about bits and sprues and all of that kind of fun stuff?
Okay, well, to start with, sprues are what most of the miniatures come on. As little plastic miniatures, there's basically a framework that when they're pressed into shape, they fit into, and that's referred to as the sprue. So if you ever see the term new on sprue, it means it's something that hasn't even been clipped off of the sprue once they've been taken out of the box.
Okay, so the sprue is just the little piece of plastic that everything's connected to.
Exactly.
Okay, cool.
So when people are referring to bits, they often are referring to anything that comes off of the sprues, although most commonly they're talking about things like weapon options or specific optional characteristics that different models can have.
Okay, so like my Herald of Tzeentch, he can hold a staff, and he can have a dagger, or he can have a book, or he can have an orb. So those are all the different little and I can only use one of those things.
Yes.
So my leftover orb and book I don't use, those are now my bits.
Yeah.
Okay, and I should just throw those right in the garbage.
No. Because for one, if you, some people want to have more varied armies, or they are looking at selling possibly just the bodies, or if a piece breaks and you need to replace it with something else, those extra bits can be very useful for that. Or if you're looking to make things like terrain, or maybe a diorama piece, or a custom objective markers for your army, you can use these extra bits to incorporate into those things to give them a bit more personality.
So it sounds like you got kind of the idea that you should probably just save all of them. Like I've got a drawer with all of my little extra sprues and blah 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 that I just hold on to stuff with.
You can definitely do that. I also have a couple extra drawers of bits. Probably much more than I need.
Sure.
But at the same time, you can always look for people who at your local gaming store might be looking to collect something for their army and they don't have the right number of bits. Like, for example, I play Space Wolves. And the Space Wolves, their basic 10-man squad box has 3 different kinds of units you can technically make with it, and all have different loadouts.
Right.
And you have the bits for all of those different loadouts in terms of the weapons and arms, but you only have a certain number of torsos and legs.
Okay.
So at the end, if I find someone who has some torsos and legs that they're not using and be willing to trade some of the weapon options that I have that are extra for those torsos and legs, I can make more Grey Hunters for my Space Wolves with the extra bits that I have.
And you don't have to go out and buy another box kind of at market retail, all that stuff.
Hopefully not.
Yeah. All right, so cool. So we want to hang on to the bits, one, because you can sort of make more players, make more units in the future by collecting them all, putting them all together. Now you're talking about custom objective markers and customizing the bases. So I did that with my Fate Skimmer, and it was sort of an homage to Tucker, since I played my first match ever against your Space Wolves. I was using your Necron army.
Yes.
But I was playing against the Space Wolves. So when I put my Fate Skimmer together, I found a sword that I actually think was leftover bits from a Skaven army, but I painted it up to look like one of the runic power swords. Found a banner and I didn't paint it well, but I painted it to look like one of the Russ Space Wolf banners. And so my Fate Skimmer, his base is textured and modeled, and there's cork and all that stuff, but he's also rolling over the top of some clearly dead, defeated Space Wolves. Just to kind of make that more fun.
Thanks for that.
Yeah. You'll always be there. I'll always think about you. You can make terrain, the custom objective markers. That's kind of cool. So we're not just playing to keep control of a penny or a poker chip. You can maybe make like a cool looking banner. Or if I've got one of those arms, I could have it be this cool magical orb that Tzeentch wants us to grab. But as far as like the customization and switching things out, you do something really cool with magnets. So how does that seems like a lot of extra work and all of that kind of stuff. How do you go about making pieces that can switch in and out?
Magnetization is its own thing, and a lot of people who I would probably say most people who play Warhammer competitively, and quite a few people who just play casually for fun, considering the number of weapon options that a lot of different units have. But at the same time, you probably, if you can avoid it, don't want to necessarily buy 4 $40 kits to get 5 units with each loadout. And instead what you can do is, if you have a hobby drill and you can buy some smaller magnets, I got mine off of Amazon, but a lot of hobby stores also sell them. It's a bit of fiddly work, but if you're willing to put the time in, for example, my Long Fang squad for my Space Wolves, I have magnetized, so I can swap them out for plasma cannons or heavy bolters or las cannons, depending on what I'm going to be fighting in a given day, or what complements best the rest of my list. If I need something that punches through armor, or need something that just puts out more shots.
Okay.
So those are the kinds of things that magnetization is really good for, and most armies, especially Space Marine armies, have so many weapon options that, depending on, and each weapon option costs a different number of points. So if you want to revamp your army at all, you might have enough points for a lower tier thing than what you wanted to ideally equip, so you want to have the option to swap that out. A lot of people, when you're playing casually, you might hear the term WYSIWYG thrown around.
Yeah, I was going to get to that, because, I mean, to a certain degree, you can just do that, right? You can just say, hey, Steve, these guys all have heavy bolters and these guys all have las cannons, and just agree to that. And I think that tends to happen fairly often.
In a casual game, if you're playing just for fun, there is no reason that I can see that someone would say they weren't okay with that, unless they were just kind of a jerk.
Yeah, but if you want in your tournaments, or if it's important to you that they look right, and this ties in with the bits, because, well, you want to have all of those different bits available to you.
Yeah.
And you can swap them in and swap them out for what you just said, WYSIWYG, which is
what you see is what you get.
Yeah, so that and then you can quickly at a glance. Now, I lucked out. I've got Chaos Demons. They're Tzeentch, they're just throwing spells, or they're clawing.
Yep.
Now, granted, my Fate Skimmer has some options, and so knowing whether it's working off of the chariot or working off of the blades, or what you've got going on there, but those aren't really bits options mechanically. He just always runs the same thing.
Yes.
Okay.
So in casual games, it's not as much of a problem, but if you're looking at playing in a tournament, some tournaments absolutely require that your army is what you see is what you get, just for consistency's sake, and everyone at a glance knows what kind of threat a unit might pose, so they don't underestimate something and then get blindsided, especially if it's something that has a paid entry fee or something like that. But most of the time, that's not a concern. If you're just going to your local gaming store and grabbing a table with a random person, as long as going into the game, everyone is clear on what things are. If it isn't what you see is what you get.
Sure. So I guess now you're faced with some of your options, and I've talked about this in other videos. Well, do I only buy from my local store? Do I only buy online? Do I only eBay stuff, or what have you? Because Games Workshop does not sell bags of bits. They're not interested in that. So where do you go to find bits, and how do you go and get those? You talked about just going to the shop and seeing who's got what, so that's an option.
Yeah, there are a couple different options. A lot of gaming stores have, or at least I've seen a couple of gaming stores that have sort of a flea market day, for lack of a better way of putting it. There's simply just people you know, friends. And there's also a lot of websites that sell specifically just Games Workshop bits. They tend to be, they're on the pricier end of things. But it's cheaper than buying another full kit.
Yeah, if a kit that costs $50 has las guns in it, well, you're only buying 4 las guns and you're going to spend $15, but that's still cheaper than the 50.
Yes.
And you got this up. And with your using magnets, I've seen some people that just use just little metal pegs as another way of doing it. Now you have that kind of customizable and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's really just, you need to be willing to put the time into it, and Warhammer is a hobby that can take up a lot of time.
But throwing together a couple of objective tokens out of the bits that you've got left over from 4 different kits you've bought over the last year, I mean, that sounds like something you can do, that it's completely creatively fun, and you can probably knock that out in an afternoon. Yeah,
and the other option would be green stuff, if you've used that or if you've heard of it, which is basically a molding putty that most game stores sell, at least in small amounts, which can be used to fill in cracks in models and things like that. But if you get good with it, and I've seen a lot of examples of people who get really good with it, you can sculpt stuff out of it for your army. Like, you don't necessarily want to try to make an entire las cannon out of green stuff. It might come out looking a little bit funky. A lot of options come into things like the term kit bashing, which is basically taking bits that weren't necessarily intended for something, but modifying them to make a unit look more unique, or to fill a specific role or something like that.
But you've been talking about that. You've been talking a little bit about kit bashing because you've got an idea for like a Valkyrie squadron?
Yes.
So wings from which army?
It's an Age of Sigmar army, actually. Okay. It's Prosecutors, I think is what the army is called. The Stormcast Eternals have a kind of flying unit that have a really cool mechanical looking wing to them.
Yeah, and you're talking about taking those Age of Sigmar wings and then putting them on your 40k units.
Yes.
To make a cool like Valkyrie. And mechanically they'll just be your jump jet troops.
Yeah, exactly. They would mechanically just be the Wolf Guard with jump packs.
And those are all still Games Workshop pieces. So
it's true.
That works that nice. Yeah, and that's wow, that brings bits and kit bashing and some green stuff skill. I mean, that's talk about how well you're able to customize, which one thing I think that's really neat about Warhammer in general, and a lot of tabletop gaming, you can apply what we're talking about to any type of wargaming.
Definitely.
Some rules are really, really tightly controlled, especially for, like you were saying, if you buy in to a tournament run by Games Workshop. But you can have some really fun, unique, customized pieces that, as soon as that army comes out, it's clearly not just like everyone else's Space Wolf army.
Exactly.
So bits are a really interesting way that you can go. There's a lot of ways to go about doing that. And if you want everything from your local store and from your own boxes, it's just about saving them up. Don't throw stuff away. I think it's a really cool, I've never been to a place, I haven't seen the flea market trading, but I really like that as an idea of getting plugged into your community. And just, I don't have a problem with go online. Go online, find the bit that you need. You're going to pay more than what it would cost if you do the math and break it down, but then you have just that piece. And you can make a cool Valkyrie squadron. And that sounds really neat. So have you used bits in the past? How do you like to use them? Where do you get them from? Do you appreciate seeing a unit when you go in to play that from your opponent that is unique and made and maybe a little bit kit bashed? Or does that bother you? Do you think, no, you build what is in the box, I want to be able to look at it, it's absolutely what you see is what you get? Where do you fit on that? And let me know why. I think both sides probably have some really good merits. Thanks a lot for coming over and watching this video. We've got a bunch of other Warhammer videos if you're just getting into it like I am, and you can check them out here or maybe over there. I don't know where it is. There'll be a link. Don't forget to, yeah, it's on that side. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. If there's a video that you think is really good, then share it with your friends. Tweet it out. Thanks for coming over here. You're the reason why we keep making these videos. I want to say a huge thank you to Joan and Arvi, Lainey, Bryce, and Sean. They are our Patreon patrons. There are a handful of them. If you would like to become one of our patrons, head over to patreon.com/roll4initiative. You'll get some cool perks in return. You help make us be able to make more videos, make better videos, buy more kits, and bash them together It'll be fantastic.
Feed the addiction.
Absolutely. Especially now that Dawn is getting into Sigmar with the Sylvaneth. So go check out our Patreon. Until next time, I'm Ryan. This is our very good friend,
Tucker.
And I'll see you next time on Roll for Initiative. Run away! Okay. Good. All right.